Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this week's virtual vacation. I see we've got some repeat people coming in. So go ahead in the chat, let us know where you're visiting us from. Don't be shy. I'm seeing some repeat names in there. Phoenix in the house, Michigan, Boston, Denver. Hey, Huey, glad you could join us.
Hi, Jennifer.
DC, Rhode Island, more Colorado. This is fantastic. New Jersey. Got a lot of East Coasters in Denver tonight. Wisconsin.
Yeah, Denver.
Ottawa, welcome. We're from Wisconsin. California's in the house as well. Nice. A lot of Colorado, Texas. Oh, La Crescenta, California. Florida, welcome, neighbor. BC and Canada, welcome. Ooh, China. We're going global.
Woo.
Cookie Blue.
Oh, Australia's in the house as well. Georgia. Very cool, very cool. We're letting people sign in. And so again, if you haven't let us know where you're from, please let us know. We'll get started in just a minute or two. And just while we're waiting, has anybody been to Portugal? If so, let us know. You can let us know if it's on your list too. We'll take both. Welcome from North Carolina. Okay, Mark, thanks for letting us know. We'll definitely wait a minute or two before addressing. Absolutely. Oh, okay. We've got Porto was the most magical city ever. Very cool. It's on your bucket list. That's fantastic. Ooh, a lot of on my lists. So that's definitely a good thing you're here tonight to learn about all this things you can see, do, and experience while in Portugal. The Azores. Very
Hi, Debbie
cool.
from Michigan. Got
On the
Mark.
list for 2023. Very cool.
They're all coming in, so welcome.
And we have a fair number of people who've been before. Maybe now you can go back after all this and experience a different part. Cool, we've got people letting us know where they're from still as well. Very cool. Oh yeah, Susan, you're not the only one whose travel plans got dashed this last year. We definitely were going to start traveling again just as soon as we can. Now, let me ask really quick, because there have been some destinations that have been open. Have any of you traveled so far? Whether it be Mexico, Croatia, the Caribbean, for any of the islands that were open? Maldives, like Candace did? Okay, Michelle, if you were there over 30 years ago, you need to go back. I'm sure it's changed quite a bit. Nice. Yeah, okay, Lydia, if your husband's been there, you get the perfect tour guide. Stacy's done some traveling. She went to Cancun. Okay. Portugal and the UK. Visit a kitchen, my living room, and dining room.
I love that, Mark.
Yeah, I've been to the kitchen, the living room, the dining room. Anybody go to Backyardo?
That's right. Oh, luckily for me, I've been able to travel, but I'm not gonna rub it in. So
the mailbox. Nice, Matt. Nice. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and get started. It's about 5 after 8. Let me get my screen up. And
Karen, you might not be able to get the full gallery view because we have almost 100. I think we're right around 100 participants. So when that happens, you can't always see everybody's picture, and that's why we have everyone muted. So we do Q&A through the chat and that kind of stuff, just so background noise doesn't drown out our presenter and that kind of thing. So
Yeah, the difference is a meeting will give you the gallery view where you see everybody. The webinar is more presenter focused.
yeah.
But please let us know your questions. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Let me share my screen. All right, everybody. Again, thank you so much for joining us on tonight's virtual vacation to Portugal. We know we were trying to have a Portugal event back in November and that didn't happen. So thank you for your patience on this. We have an even better presenter tonight. I'll introduce in just a moment. For those of you who are returning, thank you again for giving up your time to spend with us. We know how valuable your time is, and we really appreciate you getting to know us and sharing your love of travel with us. So for those of you who are new and even those returning, let me give you a little bit more reminder of background. So who we are. There are 7 travel agents from around the country. I'm Maria Stephanopoulos, located in the Tampa Bay area. We've got Candace from Michigan. Want to say hello, Candace?
Hi. Hello.
We've got Angela, who is in Wisconsin in the Milwaukee area. She's driving. I don't know if she can unmute herself to say hello. Not, that's okay. No, she's with us. Heidi's with us from Colorado. Heidi, you want to say hello?
Hello, everybody. Welcome.
And then tonight, not with us, are Susan Schaefer from Ships and Trips Travel, Barbara Oliver, Ships and Trips in the Nashville, Tennessee area, Barbara Oliver from All Together Now Travel in the Los Angeles area, and Gail Sherman from Wine Lovers Travel, also in Southern California. So for those of you who are new, we started this group back in April of last year because at that time we were shut down. We were being told it was only going to be 2 weeks, and then there was more and more negativity online, on TV, anytime you turn something on. And we decided that we needed to help with that and offer some inspiration and keep travel dreams alive, because we know that travel's not going away completely. It is coming back. It'll be stronger than before. And this is our way to give back, to all share and dream together. So where you can find us, I know some of you have already joined our Take a Virtual Vacation Facebook group. If you haven't, we welcome you to do so. We also keep previous recordings from virtual vacations, and tonight's will be in there as well. And you'll find those all in the unit section. We also have a YouTube channel. You can search for Take a Virtual Vacation, or you can put in the YouTube URL, which I will put in the chat so that everybody has an opportunity to copy it. For those of you who are in the greater Tampa Bay, Middle Tennessee, Detroit, Lake Country, Wisconsin, or in the Rockies area, we have actual meetup groups where we're going to be able to meet in person hopefully soon. Look for Eat, Drink, Travel, and those links will also be in the chat. So at this time, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I want to introduce Marco Fernandez from Sawgrass Vacations, who is here to take us on a virtual vacation to Portugal. Welcome, Marco. Thank you for joining us. And guys, he is in Portugal right now. So what time is it there?
It is shortly after 1, but I brought along a good friend of mine. Keeps me company at these hours, so we'll drink up to that.
Okay, Marco, go. Oh, really quick, guys, please make sure you can put your questions in the chat. We'll get to them as soon as we can. We'll answer them after, or if you have a burning question that you want to put in the Q&A, Candace will try and answer those as we go as well. Go ahead, Marco, take it away.
Thank you, and thank you, Maria, for the opportunity, and thank you, everybody, for taking a little bit of your time to join us here today to learn and hopefully be inspired to travel to this beautiful country in Western Europe, a country that says a lot to me because I was born in Portugal. Immigrated to the United States about 30 years ago, where in Boston. I know I saw some comments from the Boston area, people in the Boston, Rhode Island area, but still have family here in Portugal, and thus I am lucky enough to be here, coming from my kitchen to you guys. scattered all over the United States. So thank you once again for the opportunity to present to you. So we want to get started with this picture here that tells you a little bit about Portugal. And the way we prepared this presentation is to take you on a little journey of perhaps places and ideas and experiences that you might not have associated with Portugal. Everybody obviously is familiar with Lisbon. If you haven't been there, you know the big city, you know the capital city, you know Fado for the most part. My hope is that I can bring some additional things to light, some of the off-beaten path experiences and workshops and so forth. And this is exactly one of them. We want to start with the city of Aveiro. I was mentioning earlier to Maria and the team that many people, when I have this presentation, they think that this picture is Venice, and they're like, "Whoa, we're in the wrong presentation." Nope, you are not. This is Portugal. Aveiro is nicknamed the Venice of Portugal. It's a quaint little town south of Porto, about 2 hours north of Lisbon on the coast. But it is one of those towns that is not widely publicized or marketed in the major tour itineraries. This is the town I was born in, so I'm very, very familiar with, and I'm very excited to bring you a little bit of awareness to it. Beautiful canals, just like Venice, but it's much smaller. So you have 6 to 8 canals you can travel on in the midtown of the center of the city. These little beautiful boats that you can travel on as you sip a glass of champagne, and you have the traditional egg yolk pastries in Aveiro. Those are the traditional pastries from the city of Aveiro, and ovos moles, that's what we call it, and they're so good. But it's beautiful Art Deco city you can see in the background, and I think it's just a great way to start our journey, our virtual journey here in Portugal, that hopefully will inspire you to take a physical journey with the team that's here to Portugal in the coming months and years. So basically, a little bit about what we do. We're here in Portugal to support Maria and the team to have you experience the best of Portugal. Portugal is a country of explorers, and it's funny because, interestingly funny, in the 15th century, a lot of famous navigators, Prince Henry the Navigator, Pedro Alves Cabral, to name a few, they discovered Brazil, they discovered places in Africa, in Asia, and they left from Lisbon in these beautiful tall ships. And now Portugal, over the last 5-6 years, has won all kinds of awards for being the best destination to travel on the World Travel Award stage for the last 4 years running. So from 2017, 18, 19, and 2020. So it's amazing that the country that once discovered the world now is being discovered by so many people all over the world. So Portugal is a small little country next to Spain, the bigger neighbor here. Many people may not be aware, Portugal actually has one of the biggest water areas or boundaries because of the islands of the Azores and Madeira. So you have the Azores here on the middle Atlantic, as well as the islands of Madeira, which gives us one of the biggest geographic boundaries, water boundaries anywhere in the world because of those island archipelagos. The Azores is a group of 9 islands, and 2 of them actually sit on the American shelf. So they sit closer to the East Coast than they do to continental Europe. And then the remaining 7 are actually closer to Europe themselves. And then you have Madeira down here in the green. They sit closer to the African coastline and the Madeira, and that's one of the reasons why Madeira is such a warmer climate. So we're going to start with the Azores. Another beautiful picture of the Azores. For those of you who have been, you will agree this is a nature lover's paradise. This is a place that you can get lost in nature, and you don't want to find your way back for a long time. This is a place that you can hike volcanic lakes. It is the Azores are a group of volcanic islands, obviously dormant, but it is just so much raw beauty. And the great thing about it, and given the current situation we are all living in, is it is a place where you can connect with nature. You do not find many buses. You do not find a lot of activity, the hustle and bustle you see in so many major European cities, you will not find in this island paradise of the Azores. This picture here is from the island of St. Michael. We nicknamed the island St. Michael the Green Island because of the green lushness. We compare it to the green of Ireland without all of the rain. And it certainly is a very, even though there's some mountains here, it's not a very mountainous island, but it's beautiful for those people that want to experience nature, hiking, biking, horseback riding. And the great thing about it, for those of you on the East Coast, you're 4 hours away from the Azores, which belongs to Portugal, thus you're in Europe. So your 4-hour flight from Boston, direct flight to the Azores, and you're in Europe in this island paradise, where you can actually transverse from St. Michael, this island, to all of the other islands within a short 20-minute flight, or in some cases a ferry between some of the other islands as well. The other thing about the Azores that's very unique is, being 9 islands, you would think that, you see one island, you see them all. Absolutely not. I have been fortunate to have been to the Azores now probably 25, 26 times. And I will tell you, going to the island of Faial, which is the 3rd largest island, I should say, it's a very small island compared to St. Michael. It is very different than stepping off the airplane in the island of St. Michael. Faial is much smaller. It's known for the beautiful bay where the tall ships come in, but it's very, very raw in the sense of locals islands. Everybody knows each other. St. Michael is a little bit busier. This is where sometimes you have cruise ships docking in St. Michael. So it does tend to get busier than some of the other islands, but it also offers you more experiences to do. It's a larger island and there's tons to see, beautiful viewpoints, great cuisine. The Azores is also known for having a bit of a micro cuisine, different than continental Europe, because of its spices and just the different elements that they use in cooking. So again, 4 hours away, you're in this beautiful island paradise of the Azores. And then 2 hours from there, you're in Lisbon, you're in Porto, you're in Madrid. You can go to Madeira, the other archipelago as well. So Portugal offers a small country, but offers a lot of different destinations within the country, a lot of different experiences that are close by. So we're going to hop now to continental Europe, to the sunny Algarve. This is a bit of a general statement, because the Algarve, yes, it's known as the sunniest part of Portugal, is the southernmost part of continental Portugal, so immediately south of Lisbon. Through the plains of the Alentejo, you have the region we know as the Algarve. And the Algarve is known for the beautiful beaches, the sea cliffs, as you can see here in this, in this picture. You can see the beautiful white houses with the orange tile roofs. The one thing about the Algarve that is perhaps not as well known, I mean, people know about being able to play golf in the Algarve in December and January, where the temperatures are 68 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit. They know about the beautiful beaches. They know about the cuisine. It also has a tremendous amount of history that is not as evident as places like Lisbon, Porto, and even north. The Algarve being not far from the Strait of Morocco in Africa, you have a lot of influence from the Moors, from ancient times, even the Romans at some point, and you have tremendous amount of history here that is only available for those who really want to seek it, because you have small castles, small medieval palaces. You have experiences that will have you cooking with techniques used by the Moors in the 15th, 16th century. One of those, for example, is a tile workshop, which many people will know. Tile is what we call it in Portuguese, the azulejo, the blue tile you see everywhere in Portugal, the facades, the trains, the homes at the airport. Azulejo is not originally from Portugal. It was actually brought from the Moors to Portugal, and then Portugal used it for a lot of the home construction. And here in the Algarve, you will see tile workshops, also ceramic workshops. So there's a lot of history, there's a lot of culture in the Algarve that sometimes gets hidden behind just the beautiful nature of the coastline, the beaches. Many people come to the Algarve for weddings as well, because you have so, like this one, beautiful settings for their special day, and the temperature is warm throughout every day during the year. Of course, as I'm saying this, in Europe now, we're going through a deep freeze, it seems so. But normally it's been pretty warm, and the Algarve is a place where you can tee off in December and January for those golfers in there. And now we're going to move up north a little bit to the plains of the Alentejo. This is a region, it's actually the biggest region in continental Portugal. It occupies about 30% of the land mass in continental Portugal. It is the region immediately south of Lisbon before you get to the Algarve. The Alentejo also has beautiful beaches, probably not as widely known because it's a little bit cooler than the Algarve. The Algarve, because it sits on the Mediterranean bordering the Atlantic on the western side, tends to be warmer waters. The Alentejo, which is just facing the Atlantic, is a little bit cooler, but it has beautiful beaches. And the great thing about the beaches in Portugal, guys, is that they're not private. However, if you looked at the picture I showed you earlier about the Algarve, you have about 600 miles of beautiful coastline with many, many beaches that are only accessible for people without a car. So you have to walk down to the beach. And it seems even in July and August that in a lot of these beaches, if you go and arrive at the beach in the morning, you may only see 4, 5, 6, maybe 8 other couples until noon. So even though they're not private, you can get a very exclusive experience, like a picnic on the beach, barbecue on the beach. We've done weddings on the beach as well, as I mentioned, just because there is just so many those hidden coves and inlets. There's beaches you have to take a small boat to get to because it's not accessible by land because of all the sea cliffs. So just amazing experiences throughout. But the Alentejo also offers tremendous wines. So it is the biggest wine region in Portugal, bigger than the Douro Valley, which we're going to talk about afterwards. And it offers some of the most well-known wines that we back in the States know Portugal from. So if you go to the local winery, you may see a lot of wines, we'll say, from the Alentejo. Because of its climate, it produces a lot of great reds and also very, very good white wines. So you will see wineries, you will see cork trees. Again, another authentic experience is to go to a cork tree factory and see them produce everything from iPad holders to pens to shoes and dresses. Yes, dresses made out of cork. I've seen it live in person. My wife has 2 dresses. And she loves it. And they have everything cork related, and you can actually experience it. You can see how it's made in the factories in the Alentejo. So, and also one of the best cuisines in all of Portugal resides in the Alentejo because of centuries of history have enabled the locals to actually produce and tweak some of the traditional recipes that you can only find in the Alentejo. So you may have codfish all over Portugal, but if you have codfish in the Alentejo, it will be special. It is going to be unique because they have sort of tweaked that recipe, that one, and many, many others. So the Alentejo is a very special place. And again, I want to stress, it is very easy to travel from the Algarve to the Alentejo, Lisbon, up the coastline. Portugal is about the size of New Jersey as a state. So for those of you joining us from New Jersey, if you're going from the north to Cape May, from northern Jersey to Cape May, that is transversing most of continental Portugal. So it is not a big country, but there's so much different landscapes. And that's one of the advantages. You can see a lot, you can experience a lot, but you don't have to travel far to do any of those, to reach any of these the different landscapes. So now we're going to skip Lisbon and the center of Portugal and go to Porto, the capital of the north. And yes, it is a magical city. I read some of the comments as well as it was coming in. First of all, this view. This is a view of Porto from the sister city across the river called Vila Nova de Gaia. Vila Nova de Gaia is a place that is not as well known as Porto, but it's very, very important in Portuguese history and still today, because it is the place where all of the wineries will actually store and house the wine before it gets shipped to the United States, Canada, and all over Europe and Asia and so forth. So this picture is taken from Vila Nova de Gaia across the river, the Douro River, to Porto, and you can see here the beautiful houses here. This is a UNESCO World Heritage Site right here, this area here. This is called the Baixa, Baixa. That's the Portuguese word for the lower ground. And Porto, like Lisbon, is a bit of a hilly city. So ladies, leave your heels at home. This is walking shoe territory. It is a place that you want to explore on foot. Beautiful local neighborhoods. You will get lost, again, just like the Azores, but from a uniquely perspective, you will get lost and connect with a local and be able to see them go out, get a cup of coffee, the espresso, have a meal in a very local taverna, and feel like you're in a very, even though you're in the second biggest city in Portugal, you are in a local neighborhood. And that's the feeling you get when you're in Porto. Porto is also the entrance to the Douro Valley, which is not the biggest, because the Alentejo is the biggest wine producing region in Portugal, but the Douro Valley is the most well known, I should say. It is where the port wine comes from. The Douro Valley is also UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it stretches from Porto all the way to the Spanish border next to the city of Salamanca. So the Douro River, which some of you may be familiar with the Douro River cruises, they go from Porto all the way to the Spanish borders and vice versa. Very interestingly, the two big cities in Portugal have one thing that's in common. They're both seaside cities on the facing the Atlantic Ocean, but they both have a river either in next to them or in the middle. So in Lisbon, you have the Tejo River, the Tagus River. In Porto, you have the Douro River. So you have the river atmosphere, but then very, very close, you have beaches. So that is a very good coincidence for those people who love to enjoy both. A little bit of the sun and fun, but also have that atmosphere of the river and going out, walking to the local restaurants and cafes and so forth. And here it is. This is the Douro Valley. The Douro Valley, which Douro means gold, and the name itself has two literal meanings, because in the fall, just like back in the East Coast, for those of you who are joining us from that area, you know about the changing of the leaves, where all the yellows become oranges and browns and so forth, and it seems like it's a golden valley, and that's exactly in the fall. This whole region becomes a spectacle of beautiful browns and gold colors, and we call the Douro Valley. But it's also called the Douro Valley because the wine in the Douro Valley, back in the 15th, 14th century, and even to a certain point today, is regarded as gold to the producers. It was their version of the white gold, because the wineries that we now travel from thousands of miles to go see, to go stay, they have risen from necessity. These local wine families who had a small farm now have, many acres of wine producing land, and they built these winery houses where you can actually stay and enjoy a tour of the facilities. You have infinity pools. Many of them, the great thing about the Douro Valley, it's very family oriented. So many of them are still owned by the same family. This is going back 3-4 generations. So still today, when you arrive at a quinta no Douro, a quinta means a winery farm in this case, not to be confused with your typical farm. The quinta in the valley always has to do with the wine. When you arrive there, you are met by usually the owner or a family member of the owner, and the same person is cooking you breakfast, is doing the turn down service, is giving you a tour of the facilities. It's a very family oriented, and you learn so much by connecting not only with the destination, but by being able to communicate with those people who are just so impressed that they can show you their their house and their farm and give you a tour of the facilities. And that's the warm Portuguese hospitality. And the wine is always amazing. And that's why I keep it next to me at all times. So now we're going to go back to the water. We're going to go to the island of Madeira. So the island of Madeira is, if you recall, a few slides back, is the archipelago. Yes, it is an archipelago. There is more than one island, although we only say Madeira. It is located closer to the African coastline. So Madeira, you have two islands. The main island, it's called Madeira, and then you have a smaller island called Porto Santo. So the island of Madeira, which we're going to talk a little bit more about, is the biggest island, is known as the Flower Island. Why? Because there are so many different indigenous plants and fauna in the island that you cannot find anywhere else in the world. If you looked back at the map I showed you where Madeira was, it is in the middle of the spice route. So when you had the explorers coming from India, from Asia, going to the Americas, they were stopping in Madeira and they were exchanging spices. They were exchanging whatever products they had on board, right? To make sure they had food on board to continue their trip. And thus, today, Madeira is an epicenter of all of these different plants and flowers, some of them from Asia, some of them from Africa, from the Middle East, from North America, and obviously from Europe. They're just this colorful mix of flowers and plants that you can't find anywhere else in the world. The other unique thing about Madeira, and you've heard me say this earlier, I believe, is that it has a very temperate climate all year round, even warmer than the Algarve. Yes, even warmer than the Algarve. So in December, I always use this analogy because I've been privy to be in Madeira for New Year's for the last, without this past year being an exception, obviously, the past 8 years. We are wearing tank tops and shorts, and I'm from the East Coast. So if I'm wearing tank top and shorts, you know it's warm. It is usually about 75 degrees. Even in August, it doesn't get much higher than 84 degrees. This is in Fahrenheit. It's a great island for families to explore because, yes, it has a lot of raw nature to it, but it also has Funchal, which is the biggest city in Madeira. And you have tremendous amount of five-star hotels, restaurants. You have Michelin star restaurant on premises. You have tons of different activities. And of course, you're in Europe, so you have that history as well. But a lot of Europeans flock to Madeira because of its warmer climate, more so than even the Azores, which tends to be a little bit cooler. So Madeira is sort of a one island, or in this case, two islands that sort of take a little bit of the Azores, a little bit of the mainland Portugal, and add tons of flowers, tons of water activities, beautiful sunsets if you can get out on the water in Madeira. Just so much to do, and great family experiences there as well on the island. It is an island that is becoming more well-known. Keep in mind, unlike the Azores, there is no direct flight to Madeira. So you have to travel either via the Azores or via Lisbon to get to Madeira. Those flights between the Azores or Lisbon to Madeira are only 2 hours, a bit shy of 2 hours, about an hour, 45 minutes. So very quick flights. And you're in this beautiful island where it feels like a tropical paradise without the local flair, without being so busy. You know, it's very local. I keep using that word a lot because this is the sense you get when you arrive in Madeira. You can explore the local flower gardens. You can go on hikes in the water channels. We call them the lavadas, where it brings the water right from the top of the mountains down to the villages down by the water. So you can go on hikes there as well. So tremendous experiences, nature-oriented experiences in Madeira too. So now we're back to the mainland. We're back to solid ground here, to the center of Portugal. This is where the city of Aveiro, which I started the presentation on, resides. So the center of Portugal is where I'm speaking to you from. It is an area immediately south of Porto before Lisbon. It's a fairly large area. It includes places like Coimbra, which some of you may have heard of, We call Coimbra the university city because still today, one of the world's oldest universities is still open and still in operation in Coimbra. Places like Serra da Estrela, which is the second highest peak in Portugal, the first one being the island of Pico in the Azores. And the other place that's a little bit more well-known perhaps is Óbidos, which is the 17th century walled-in fortress that's only about an hour north of Lisbon. Oh, of course, you have Fatima. For those of you who know of Fatima and follow the story of the Marian Shrine and Our Lady and the apparitions, Fatima is about an hour south of where I am within the center of Portugal. So there's so much to see, so much to do. This picture here is a little town not far from Aveiro itself. It's called Águeda. And every year they have a festival of we call it the Umbrella Festival. You can see the beautiful umbrellas in the sky here. And it's funny because there really isn't a lot of rain in the summer in Portugal. So the first time they put the umbrellas, we're like, well, what's going on? But then we realize it's a public art display. And every year since then, they've been doing it. And you will see places all over the world now starting to replicate it. But the very first one, the original one, started in Águeda. And you can actually walk down the street. It's very local. You can see some of the locals relaxing here on the benches. You can see some of the street art as well. But this umbrella festival attracts tourists from all over the world. You will see the streets, not just its main street, sprinkled with umbrellas, different colors. They also do it for Christmas with lights hanging from the umbrellas with the white light, silver, and so forth. So it's just simply beautiful. And that's the other thing Portugal does offer. It's each region, each city, each parish, and even in Lisbon, for example, you have St. Anthony. In Porto, you have St. John. You have localized feasts, neighborhood feasts that you, as a traveler, can participate and actually enjoy the local festivities. So at any given point, especially in the summer, on the weekend, you're bound to have music, great food, wine, in any of these small cities, which is an added plus as you're traveling because you're connecting with the local culture and the ambiance. And now we're moving to Lisbon, which is the vibrant capital. It's interesting. Every time I go to Lisbon, I think it's reinventing itself. It's an amazing city, very different than it was 10, 15 years ago. For some of you who have been to Lisbon before and have not seen it recently, it's almost like a new city. There is so much going on in Lisbon and so much construction and so many new neighborhoods sort of developing that were forgotten 15, 20 years ago. But I love this picture because it tells of the history of Lisbon and the architecture. This is in the main part, one of the very few flat grounds in Lisbon. Some of you who have been there will agree. We call Lisbon the city of seven hills. So there are some sections that are flat. This is one of them. But it is a city like Porto that yearns to be discovered by walking the old neighborhoods. You have Alfama on one side, you have Bairro Alto on the other side. These neighborhoods were the only neighborhoods left standing after the 1755 earthquake that basically destroyed the city. So because the other neighborhoods were down on the lower level, they were rebuilt after the earthquake. So Bairro Alto and Alfama are just amazingly pristine, and you can see the beautiful sidewalk streets. This is where Fado happens. So when you are walking through these neighborhoods of Alfama, Bairro Alto, you will see the Fado houses, which I invite everybody to experience Fado. It's funny when I go to a Fado concert, and me being Portuguese, of course, I know the language, I know the history of Fado, I know the meaning of Fado. And sometimes it's hard to translate to someone who comes over from the States. And I've met friends of mine who are older and who don't know a word of Portuguese, and they're crying because they can feel the emotion of this Fado singer. And these are grown men in their 50s and sometimes in their 60s. And they don't know why they're crying, but they just feel the emotion of the voice of the Fado singer. So it is something to be experienced, not to be heard. Fado is an experience by itself. So definitely invite all of you to experience Fado when you're in Lisbon, because it is such a big, important part of the city. There's such a story to it. And for those of you who are wondering what Fado is, a little short description is it's a melancholic song of Portugal. It is the national song of Portugal. Some people call it the Portuguese opera. I'm not sure that that's a very accurate description. Fado is very personal to the singer who's singing it, and there's stories of why they're singing it. There's a reason why they're singing it a certain way. Fado tends to be a sad song, although there are somewhat of an upbeat version to it. But the old traditional Fado, the one I grew up listening to, is much more of a melancholic and more saddened song, talking about heart, love lost and losing someone, a loved one, and so forth. But it is an experience definitely to be had when you're in Lisbon. So this is a little bit else. So basically, these are another picture of the Azores here. The great thing about things you can do in Portugal is that you can do this with one person, you can do it with a couple. So some of you who are traveling by themselves, there's a lot of people who are solo travelers these days. Or if you're traveling with your family, I think we realize, given the situation today, that we perhaps may not want to be traveling with 50 people all the time. But you then look at places around the world that are very geared towards very large groups, places like Rome and London and Paris. And the Azores offers this tranquility, and that it's an amazing way to experience the destination, because you as a solo traveler or just a couple can have a really amazing destination without having to necessarily be in a very, very big group. These are travel documents to send out. Deluxe transportation, you can be traveled around in style. And the difference is in details. I love this picture here because it talks about the picnics you can have in the Douro Valley, the amazing experiences you can have all over Portugal with the local foods, the local wines, and so forth. Just such a beautiful viewpoints there in Portugal. You can stay in beautiful 18th century palaces and pousadas. These are buildings that are been converted from palaces, convents, old bank buildings that are now 5-star deluxe hotels, white glove service. So you can be the queen of your own castle for a couple of nights. And these are scattered all throughout Portugal, up on a hill or in the historic centers of the city. And you heard me mention about the wineries. Here's a beautiful picture of one of the wineries. This is one that I've stayed a few times, and I just love the views. You can see down below here the Douro River, a little bit of the Green River here. You can see the wineries right here. Something to just stress on the wine itself and the wineries. This is not done by machines. This is all hand-picked, hand-grown, maintained by people and not machines. And every year around harvest, you will see an army of volunteers and workers to collect the grapes and actually be able to start the process of producing that year's harvest. And this is just one of the properties where you can actually stay and experience that. And if you're lucky there to be there during the harvest time, which is typically late August, early September, depending on weather conditions, this is one of the most fun activities, I think. And me being a wine and food guy, I love it every time. You can actually participate, stomp on the grapes. You can collect the grapes, cut it down, bring it to the facilities where they'll crush it. And it's just such an amazing experience. It's something that's very hard to replicate anywhere in the world. And again, with that local family feeling around the harvest, many of these small to mid-sized wineries, they need all of the help that they can get to start the harvest process, get the grapes from the vines to their facility to start producing the wine. So they will actually invite the locals and any tourists around to help them. And so you get a T-shirt commemorating the event, and you actually get a very good meal. They feed you, and you get good wine, obviously. And you're there for a couple hours helping out in the process. And you make friends. These are about making lifelong memories as well with all the people around you, including the people in the village. So it's not something you can replicate in cities like Rome or even Napa Valley or London. It's, again, a very family-oriented type of experience. I will say, for those of you who want to do the harvest, there usually is a very limited space because that is such a very premium time to experience Portugal because everybody wants to do these activities. So definitely start thinking about it now, but it's very worth the time and the effort to be there, and you will thank me later. Here's a couple other examples, just thematic type experiences in Portugal, yoga, wellness. I mean, we go back to wine and culinary. Let's face it, we Portuguese, we like to drink, we like to eat, even at 1:30 in the morning or whatever time it is. Culture and history, active, beach. Look at that picture. That picture of the beach there, of the Algarve, is a prime example of what I mentioned earlier about the secluded private beaches. You have beaches that you can only go to by boat. You cannot access by foot from the main coastline because of all of these huge rugged hills. So this is a beautiful experience because you can actually have a bit of your own private beach during your stay in Portugal. And of course, family. One of the things I think sometimes gets lost when we talk about vacationing, we all say, hey, we're going to take my kids on vacation. We're going to go to Europe. And, 2 weeks later, after you come back and you say, how was it? Well, my kids didn't really enjoy it as much. So I didn't really have as much fun as I wish I had. I've heard this time and time, and I've had this experience myself. So one of the things why I think Portugal is such a great country, other than everything that I mentioned up until now, is there are just amazing experiences for children. First of all, it's a family-oriented country. Second of all, it's a very safe country. It has been on the Global Peace Index, I think that's the ratings, 3 years in a row as the #3 safest country in the world, after New Zealand and Iceland. So I don't ever think we're going to beat New Zealand and Iceland, let's be honest, but I'll take #3. That's pretty good. On the same Global Peace Index, the United States was somewhere around 144th, just to give you perspective. But today, when you arrive in Portugal, what you will find is children, obviously I'm talking about today in the normal world, you will find children playing outside at 10 o'clock at night in the swing sets. You will find children going to the restaurants with their family. You will find activities that are geared around children, including cooking workshops for children from ages 6 all the way to ages 18. The places like Sintra, for example, which is well known for Pena Palace and these magical castles, you can actually create a treasure hunt activity for your children. So you are actually doing a hunt around treasures, for treasures around castles, real castles, not made up ones. And then there's all kinds of festivities. There's the chocolate workshop and chocolate festival in Avilés. There's just so much to do. Oh, one of my favorites is the overnight in the Oceanarium in Lisbon, where you can actually overnight with your children there, and they can learn how to take care of the fish, and with the trainer, obviously. And it is an amazing experience that you would normally not even think of, but they get so much out of it. And again, especially when there's other kids there, it's a great way for them to forge new memories. And let's face it, if my kids have a good time on vacation, I'm going to have a good time on vacation. If they don't have a good time on vacation, I'm not having a great time either. They're going to make sure of that. So Portugal is a very great destination, very family oriented. So that's very, very important to know. So, continuing on these beautiful views, and you can see here another way to see the beautiful Douro Valley. You have these classical car transfers and tours. So just trying to paint this picture here, 1957 Cadillac, top down, going through being driven around the Douro Valley while you're sipping private wine tastings at different wineries throughout. And it's not even the harvest time. So imagine if there was, you'd just be stopping in and then helping to actually stomp on the grapes and do the wine. This is the life. And it is just a beautiful way to see it, to see this beautiful region. Yoga and wellness. Again, and I'm going to point out a couple destinations here that are more geared for yoga and wellness than others, because obviously cities like Lisbon are probably not the most sought after destinations for yoga and wellness, although it does happen. But places like the Azores, Madeira, you saw how beautiful the nature is in these two destinations. Places like the Alentejo with the cork and the wineries all around you, and the beautiful coastline. Those are great destinations for yoga and wellness, and we've seen many yoga instructors and wellness instructors actually bring groups and do classes on site in Portugal. So definitely a place to wind down, to rejuvenate, and you can see the hydrangeas here in the back on this picture here. This is definitely in the Azores because it is the place for hydrangeas, all different colors in the different islands there. Time for private wine tastings. I'm very proud of this picture because I took it. This is one of the few pictures where I actually took it. I own the rights to it. And that must have been my third cup of white wine. So the picture is not too bad yet, but it's a beautiful picture because this is again in the Douro Valley. You can see I go back to it every once in a while, but because it's so beautiful. And again, this is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And one of the experiences you can do while in Portugal is all over Portugal, but I think it means so much more when you're doing it in a wine region, being in the Alentejo or the Douro Valley. You can have these private wine tastings where you can actually stay at a winery in a quinta and go have lunch at another winery and taste their wine, come back to your own winery and actually blend wine that from 3 different bottles and create your own label. All this in a day. And then you just sleep for the rest of the next 2 days and a half. But it is an amazing experience. And again, the white wine, especially in the summer, very, very refreshing. Also, one of the things that we're very proud of too is the cuisine in Portugal. Probably a lot of you will know if you are Portuguese or know somebody who's Portuguese, you will know bacalhau. That is as Portuguese as fado is, because that is we call the codfish bacalhau. And being Portuguese, there are 1,001 different ways of making bacalhau. I know it because my wife has tried, I think, 800 of them, and I think we've got a couple more 100 to go. But it is a very sort of, what do you call it, family-oriented recipe. So every village will do it differently than the other one. And I say this why? Because one of the workshops you can do is actually cook your own bacalhau, cook your own meal. It doesn't have to be bacalhau. It could be meats, it could be fish, it could be shrimp. But it would be a Portuguese dish, okay, with a Michelin star chef. You can see here, this gentleman here, he is a Michelin star chef in the city of Porto. He owns a restaurant there. And these are customers here doing a private cooking workshop with him. This other younger gentleman here, he's also a Michelin star chef. He used to own a restaurant in New York City. His name is George Mendes, so some of you may recognize him. And this was an experience where we were cooking up a storm. We actually had the entire restaurant just for us. So this is a unique experience, especially for a small group of 8 to 12 people. And you can try your hand at cooking up a storm, all the Portuguese dishes, the pastries, the pastéis de nata, the bacalhau, the meats. Very, very good. And that's, just a great way to learn about the destination through the food. Of course, I mentioned earlier about the Algarve, tea times in the Algarve. So what better way to tee off when you can have the Atlantic Ocean as your clubhouse, right? So beautiful picture here of one of the golf courses in the Algarve. You can see the beach down below. And there are about 30 different golf courses in the Algarve alone. Some of the best rated PGA courses in Portugal are in the Algarve, and they host tournaments, I should say, annually. So if you are a golfer, this is the place to go. I will say you can actually create sort of your own golfing journey where you can golf in the Algarve and then golf in the Azores and Madeira, because they both have 18-hole golf courses there as well. So you can explore the country. While your wife does the spa and the yoga, you can tee off a couple of rounds and nobody will notice. Everything's close by, and have a great time doing it. And this is another great activity. This is one of my favorites, is enjoying the sandy white beaches as you gallop down here. This is in Comporta, right outside of Lisbon, but you can be anywhere in Portugal in these beautiful horses. Portugal has a history of horseback riding and just horse breeding. We have our own horse sort of traditions called the Lusitano, which is a Portuguese horse, a thoroughbred, very agile, strong, just like us Portuguese. And you can actually experience galloping down the seashore here right outside of Lisbon, a beautiful experience. And you may come to me and say that I am not being truthful, but I will tell you that in July and August, you will get scenes like this where in a beach setting, you will not find many other people on the beach. And again, the reason being is that there's so many beaches scattered throughout that if you pick the right one at the right time, you can actually have a really exclusive experience. So yes, you can have scenes like this where you will have more than 6 feet around you, or 10 feet if you're from the East Coast and you go to Cape Cod. You know, sometimes you can't get 2x2 space to plot down an umbrella, and in Portugal you can, even in July and August. Leisure time. So again, the Algarve. I mentioned to you about those quote unquote private beaches. So this is not a place where you can actually just drive up to the beach. You can see the wooden walkway down to the beach. And these are very local beaches. Sometimes when you pick up a map, they will not even be highlighted. You really have to know where to go. And luckily we know where to go. And so these are amazing experiences where you can actually enjoy this beautiful sandy spot almost just for yourself, because only the locals know where they are. And you know, a lot of times you'll see them people coming here for the sunrise and sunset, and from here you can actually take a small boat and go to other beaches that are on the other side of the sea cliffs because you can't access them by land. Time for me at the Bellman Reed Hotel Madeira. And this is another property I just love to highlight because it's such an iconic property. And you can see here how it just jets out to the ocean. And this is one of their infinity pools that they have. It's a beautiful property. And you can actually have the 5 o'clock tea at the property here and just be treated like royalty for your time in Madeira. You know, Madeira has a lot of English connection and influence because Churchill stayed at this hotel in the shortly after the war. I don't recall the exact years, but he stayed at this hotel. And after that, many English tourists came to Madeira and sort of set roots there. So you will find everywhere in Portugal, you find English is widely spoken, but especially here in Madeira because of that connection. Also, a little history fact. Some of you were not prepared for history today, but I'm going to give it to you anytime. Tea actually started from the Portuguese. The word tea is actually an acronym for Transporte de Ervas Aromáticas, which is Portuguese for transportation of herbs with aroma, with aromatic herbs. So the word tea did not start in England. It was actually a Portuguese princess that was married in England at the time and brought tea to UK and started the 5 o'clock tea tradition there. And that's why we Portuguese are very proud of still today having that tradition back in Madeira, but all over Portugal. But yes, you've learned that tea originally came from Portugal. Time to be active. You can see the beautiful coastline here. This is in the Alentejo. You can see the Alentejo is a bit different than the Algarve because the cliffs are not as high. So you can see it's a lot more level ground to the water. But just imagine being able to take a bike or a hike or just be able to experience being outside so close to the ocean. And again, this is where we invite you to step out of the car, the bus, the minivan, and so forth, and just experience nature, because there are not many places where the ocean meets the land and it just creates this type of experience. Of course, time for romance. You can see here, this is one of the many activities you can find all over Portugal with spa services on the beach, you know, just the romantic dinners, coffee and so forth. And this is one of the hotels on the beach where they can offer those services there. For those of you on the East Coast and in the North where you're experiencing, you know, 34-degree weather, I think this is a really heartwarming picture right now. And here's another one. So this is also another hotel where it has beautiful spas and just restaurants, and you can have services right outside as well. There's a few hotels that have won in Portugal, especially in the Alentejo, that have won best all-inclusive romantic hotel and so forth. So that's why we wanted to sort of highlight that experience. And for those of you who are wishing to spend a special day in Portugal, i.e. weddings, of course, honeymoons and so forth, just look at how pristine, how beautiful the setting is for your special day in Portugal. I really like the first two here because they are, especially this one here is on the vineyard, but just the decorations here on this the middle picture, it is just so beautiful and pristine and very local to the atmosphere, right? So you can actually get married in a castle, in a palace, and have all of these wonderful experiences that we just talked about. So next time, if you're looking for a place to get married, and think about Portugal, because we've seen a trend of many brides that are sort of foregoing that typical beach wedding and looking for something different, something unique, something a little bit more personalized as well. So places like the wine regions in Portugal, as well as the Azores and Madeira, are really, really interesting for those brides. Photo tours. So if you're a photographer and an avid photographer, or somebody who loves photography, Portugal is a place that you can take amazing pictures. You've seen all the pictures I showed you, and it's also a bird watcher's paradise as well, because you have, with the islands of the Azores and Madeira, you have a lot of birds that will actually stop in these islands before they migrate over to the Americas. This is a few pictures that we took last year from a photo tour we had with a gentleman, some of you may recall his name, is Pete Souza. He was the former, or is the former, White House photographer for Barack Obama. And that is the gentleman there with a big lens, and also the gentleman here with the blue and white striped shirt. But it was an amazing experience. But the photo tours can be done by a couple, can be done by a small group. There's so much to see and photograph. And it's amazing when you can actually create your own itinerary where the function is to take pictures of this beautiful country that you actually experience while you're taking pictures of, and then you can actually have a memento for it. So I think it's just a beautiful way to travel. And then I mentioned about the family affair. Here you have a picture of a cooking experience for children. This is a chocolate workshop, which my kids have done, and they love it. They rave about it. And I think, that's the one thing sometimes we forget is, traveling is not just about seeing. It's about experiencing, creating memories, be it with your family, friends. And I think it's important to have the whole family engaged. And I think that's why these workshops are so important. Not just the adults are playing golf or going to the spa, but you also have these workshops geared around children where they can actually create pastries and cakes, and at the end of the experience, they're like, wow, I created this and it tastes great, and and they're so proud of it. And I think sometimes we forget about that element when we travel. And we have come, thankfully, to the end. Hopefully, I didn't lose too many of you. So I want to say obrigado to Maria and the team, but obrigado to all of you for staying with me on this journey of Portugal. Hopefully, we've inspired you to travel there and perhaps drink some of the Portugal's finest wine as well.
Well, thank you so much,
Thank
Marco.
you.
This was great. I know we have some questions.
Sure.
One of the questions that came over just recently was, how does traveling in Portugal compare to cost to other countries, cities in Europe?
Sure.
And so if you can just, I know in, the main areas of Europe, Germany, France, that kind of stuff, that those main areas, they do the euro a lot. And so do
Yeah.
you have the euro as well, or how does
exactly. No, great question. We do have the euro. So Portugal is one of the 27 countries within the European Union, and most of these countries are under the European coin, which Portugal is. So like Germany, UK, France, and so forth. Not the UK, I'm sorry, the UK is on pound, but Germany, France, and Italy, Portugal is under the euro currency. And this is where the similarities end, because one of the things we find is that when people from the States come to Portugal, they find that their dollar goes a little bit further than it does even in Spain, and especially than in Italy and in France. Typically, for those of you who have traveled to Europe, I'm going to give you some sort of basis point. You know, a beer is less than €1. I'm talking about not even your Coors Light or your Heineken, like a good beer, like a Superbock beer, is €1, which is about $1.10, $1.15 today. And if you're looking at Italy or Spain, you will find that to be typically higher. A very traditional meal with wine will run about 12 to 16 euros tops. So a family of four can have a really good meal experience for not so much money. And I think that compares really well with places like Spain, which is amazing food as well, but it's traditionally higher than Portugal. So the dollar does tend to go a bit further in Portugal. Um, and I also think of one of the things that Portugal is well known for, this is economics aside, is the Portuguese hospitality, where we've had situations where someone was lost and the owner of a little shop or cafe closed the door and was able to get the person to the highway and things of that nature. It's just the warm Portuguese hospitality makes a big difference.
Marco, do you have, is your mic hitting your shirt? There's some feedback that was coming.
No, is this better?
Yes.
Sorry.
Wait.
The wine's finally catching up to me. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So do you want me to repeat that?
No, it's good now. It's just, it was like a clicking and I was like, maybe it's your hookup.
It might have been, yes. I apologize.
No worries. We have a few other questions about getting around Portugal. Is there Uber or an equivalent to get around the country, or are trains a better way to travel?
So trains within the big cities are definitely a better way to travel. In Lisbon, Porto, and some of the smaller mid-sized cities, you can get Ubers and Lyfts and other share riding services. But I will say one of the things about coming to Portugal and seeing the countries, you want to also see places like I mentioned, Aveiro, Coimbra, and sometimes the best way to see it is to take the train, or if there's local transportation, and then be able to explore the city on your own, be able to see it. Uber is not, for example, available in the Azores yet. So in the Azores, definitely you want to have access to transportation. Either private guide transfer or trains or buses. But definitely in Lisbon, you will have all the share riding services available.
And one of the questions everyone asked, there was a couple of people who asked, was about speaking English or other language. I know Portuguese is the main language there, but it's my understanding that everyone has some level of English that they speak. So that shouldn't be an issue if people don't speak Spanish or Portuguese or whatever, right?
Not at all, not at all. So I was born here in Portugal, as I mentioned, and in 4th grade, it was obligatory to learn English.
Right.
This is a few decades ago.
Sure.
Now in 1st grade, they are teaching English to the children in kindergarten and 1st grade as well. So by the time somebody's graduating secondary school, which is sort of high school back in the States, many of the children here will already have 3 languages under their belt.
Yeah.
English is very widely spoken, with the exception of some of the smaller cities, smaller villas. When you go out to the interior, you have a lot of places, and that's the fun thing about traveling, is that when you step off the main touristic routes, right, you find yourself in really the heart of the country. And those are the places sometimes you may find people don't know English as well. They know a few words here and there, but that's the fun way of traveling, right? That's the experience you get of learning a new language, trying your skills of the language. And the worst they can do is they'll, just like Italians, we tend to speak with our hands and we get the job done. So
Right.
So another question that came in was asking about how long is recommended to see all of Portugal?
So it's a great question. I would say it's very hard to see all of Portugal, although, as I mentioned, it's not a big country, but you have so much in all of these different regions that you could spend a good 4 or 5 days in each one and not be able to experience it all. So knowing that most people don't have the luxury of being of traveling for 2 months plus, I would say that on average 10 to 12 days is a good time to see the country, experience some of the things we talked about, but do it in a leisure way. You know, the one thing I really try to stress about traveling anywhere, but especially in Portugal, is it's such a beautiful country. It's a country where the sun shines on average 300 days of the year. And of course, as I'm saying that, we're in a time where it's been raining the last 3 days, but the sun typically shines almost every day here in Portugal, and you want to be outside, you want to see it, and you want to be able to enjoy it, not rush through it. So you don't want to be moving from point A to point B to point C within a day. And yes, you can take tons of pictures, but you will not sort of connect with the things you see it. So you want to do it leisurely, and that's why we feel that 10 to 12 days really gives you that sweet point where you can actually enjoy the bulk of the country and still have time to go to a coffee, have dinner, experience fado, go out and sit by the ocean or by the river and so forth.
Sure.
Part to that question that came in was asking about how long the drive is from one end of the other to or one end of the country to the other.
Yeah, so within the mainland Portugal, obviously, you have the north, where cities like Viana do Castelo, Braga, Guimarães, which is north of Porto, all the way to the Algarve is a good 5-6 hour drive. So similar to what you would find in New Jersey, for example, if you're going from the north all the way to the south, to the tip of Cape May.
Another question that came in is, how is the food for vegans?
Oh yeah. So I mean, as long as you tell the restaurant or the hotel in this case that you are vegan or you have other kind of dietary requirements, there is no issue at all. The only thing that you will find, again, the exceptions are the small little villages where you have one restaurant, two restaurants, and it may be sometimes harder to get a special kind of meal or a dietary meal there. But 99% of the time, you have gluten-free, you have vegetarian, you have everything available to you. Keep in mind, Portugal is a country that has hosted cultures all over the world for generations. So we're very used to having tourists visiting the country, not just the last 10 years, but even prior to that. So as a country, we've evolved and adapted to make sure that we have all of the different options available to the tourists as they come in.
So what about tipping in Portugal?
Yeah, so it's a very good question, because it's very sometimes how should I describe it? It's not what you expect. Most of Europe, I think people will agree that tipping is very different than the United States. Portugal sort of follows that model. People are paid on an hourly wage, and for most of the part, most of the time, they do not expect or anticipate a tip. My suggestion is this, and I do this across everywhere I travel, not just here in Portugal, is that if you are having a great service, being a meal or something else, sometimes you round up the bill. If it's 14 euros and 20 cents and you leave 15 euros, that is a very good, reasonable tip. I've had cases where we've had people that eaten at a restaurant, even at a coffee place, and they left a €5 bill. They thought they were leaving a tip, and they had the waiter run after them because they thought they forgot the money in their plate. That's part of the culture in Portugal. So that's not to say that in cities like Lisbon, people will not look for the typical American client because they know they tip well. Of course, I think that's something that we sometimes forget about. But when you get away from the tourist areas, when you go to the more local, regional, the places that are more traditional, tipping is something that's not observed. You know, you get, here's the cost for it, you pay for it, you go on your way.
Okay, so would there be any other cultural faux pas we would need to be aware of?
For those of you who like to eat early, yes, it's something that you need to understand. Like most of Europe, Portugal has very late lunch and dinner hours. And that sometimes can be, especially when you arrive early in the morning in Lisbon and you get settled into the hotel, you're fortunate that you can check into the hotel early, and you're looking for a traditional Portuguese meal at 12:30 for lunch, or maybe before 7:30, 8 o'clock for dinner. Are there places open? Yes, you can always get food. Don't get me wrong, but the one thing that's very cultural with Portuguese cuisine and the timing is that Portuguese, we tend to eat late. So lunches are from 1:30 until 3:30 sometimes, and then dinners are from 8:30 to 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. I've had friends.
That's kind of a European thing, though. I mean,
It is.
you have
It
to
is.
tell Americans, don't expect your 5:30, 6 o'clock dinner. That's not normal.
No, not at all. You know, I've had friends of mine come from the US and we're hosting them here. We'll go to a restaurant and, at 9 o'clock at night. And that's sometimes that's early, depending which restaurant you go to, because by the time we finish at 10:30, you have the locals walking in for the late serving. So that restaurant will be up until 2 o'clock in the morning serving food. And that's very typical here in Portugal, and to some extent in Spain as well. They eat very late there too, and some places in France. So that's something I would definitely highlight.
All right, now for those wanting to rent a car, is it difficult to find parking, especially in the bigger cities?
Yes, I was going to say, especially in the big cities. You can see here in this picture in Lisbon, I would not recommend a car. Places like Porto, I would not recommend a car. It would be the equivalent of renting a car in Boston or New York City. Not only are the streets smaller than your typical American highway, and the cars even smaller, you also have very limited parking spaces. So you will be spending most of the time trying to find a parking space to go to dinner or lunch, or enjoy just shopping or whatever activity you're doing. If you're renting a car, I would suggest definitely renting from Lisbon as you travel up north, or from vice versa. If you're in Porto, renting it from Porto down to Lisbon, and then leaving the car at the airport at that point.
Okay, and then Mark just added that if you get the Via Verde app, that includes parking lots, garages, and meters.
Yes, although some of them, you have to be careful. Some of them don't work. You will say they'll have a sign saying Via Verde. The Via Verde, for those of you who don't know, is sort of the Easy Pass. I think in the East Coast we call it the Easy Pass. In other parts of the country there may be other. Fast Lane, I think, is widely known as well.
Midwest is Fast Lane.
Fast Lane, there you go. So yeah, we have Via Verde here in Portugal. You can pay for parking. You can, if you have the app, you can pay for a lot of the tolls. And it's actually, Portugal is a very tech-oriented country. You can actually you have an app for everything. You can actually pay your electrical bills and your gas bills. Not the case if you're traveling, but if you're ever residing here, you can go to the ATM and pay all your utility bills in one shot. It's a very sort of technology-oriented economy. But to that point, yeah, you can pay for parking with Via Verde. However, not all garages accept it. And even when they have the sign, sometimes it's not working. So I would double check, always have some money on you and coins, because sometimes those parking garages do not accept the $5 or $10 notes, or they'll only accept up until a $5 euro note, and then you'll have to make change.
And then one other question that came in is asking about, I know you mentioned about how safe Portugal is. So safety for an older woman traveling alone.
Definitely. I mean, I would say this as a sort of caveat to the question is, everywhere you go in anywhere in the world, you have to be conscious of your surroundings. Is there petty crime in Portugal? Of course there is. Is there crime overall in Portugal? Yes, there is, but to a much lesser extent than you will find in major European capitals like London, Paris, Rome, and so forth. And that's why I mentioned too that you'll find children at night at 10 o'clock at night playing, 11 o'clock at night playing. Of course, they're with their family, but that just goes to show you we're confident. We bring our kids out when we go out to dinner at those hours and so forth. And as long as you are conscious of your surroundings and you're not veering into areas where, let's face it, if we're in either Asia or the Americas, we know what those areas we're not supposed to be in. They don't look right? So as long as you are in the areas that are visible, that are lit and so forth, you're fine for the most part.
Great.
Matt is asking about the flights going to our flights going directly to the Azores rather than having to change planes in Lisbon.
Yes. So from Boston only, at this point, there is flights from Boston to the Azores to St. Michael, which is that first island that I showed you with the beautiful lake. So there are direct flights from Boston to the Azores. And then, of course, you can go Boston, Lisbon, and backtrack to the Azores as well. I will say this. In a normal cycle of flights, you will have daily flights to Lisbon from Boston and then other US cities as well. However, to the Azores, they will not be daily. They will be 3 or in the summer 4 times a week. So you have to be conscious of that so that you can plan accordingly. Same thing on the return. So if you're coming from the Azores back to Boston, for example, or via Boston to some other US city, those flights may not be daily. So you definitely want to make sure you account for that for your travel plans.
Perfect. Well, that looks like all the questions we have. Marco, thank you. Oh, wait, what popped up? Something just, I'm getting a lot of thank yous. Great presentation. Oh, one other question did sneak in. How safe is the drinking water? Or should we do bottled water?
Yeah, no, you can drink from the faucet. I was born here. I was born drinking from the faucet. I still have, I always tell people just to buy water because it's so inexpensive, 50 cents for a bottle of water that we pay $2 back home. Just because there's a perception. I drink from the faucet. My whole family does it. We don't have any issues, but I grew up doing it. So what happens sometimes is somebody who has a weak stomach or is not used to it may get a reaction to it. Nothing wrong with the water. It's just part of traveling all over the world. I've traveled to places where they tell me the water's safe, and I just had a bad case of stomach sometimes for a couple of days just because I'm not used to it. That's all.
Perfect. Again, lots of thank yous coming in. We are going to, we just got one more question. And then this has got to be the last question.
It's okay.
Feel free though to email any of the travel advisors. I just put our email addresses back in the chat, and you can copy them by going to the 3 little buttons at the bottom in the chat area. If you click on more, you should be able to save that and have our information. But we did get a question about the COVID restrictions.
Sure. Yep.
What's going on now?
Of course, valid question with everything that's going on. I'm just going to stop. There you go. So based on the situation we have now, just like most of Europe, Portugal is sort of doubling down with the restrictions. There are restrictions going out at certain times. There are closures on non-essential stores and so forth at this moment, which Portugal went through back in March. So it's not something that we're terribly alarmed for. We know that this is a temporary situation, and we're very confident that in the coming months, things will be a lot better. We're all following protocol, masks, just like in the States, 2 meters, the equivalent of 6 feet distance when traveling or avoiding crowds. I think the government is doing a good job of sort of communicating everything. We get messages all the time of different areas that we need to avoid that are more susceptible than others. So we just try to stay on top of that. But we're all sort of hunkering down and just hoping for the best. And we're very confident that in the next few months, especially as the weather gets warmer, things will get a lot better for all of us.
And we're all hoping for that, for sure.
Yes, we are.
So Marco, again, thank you so much for joining us and staying up half the night to do so. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No problem. My pleasure. Thank you so much, Rose.
For those of you who are still with us, thank you again for joining us tonight. Be sure to either check out our Facebook group at Take a Virtual Vacation, or through our meetups or Eventbrite. Make sure you connect with us. Next week, we are visiting Iceland. In the meantime, for those of you who are interested in going to Portugal, email one of the travel advisors that we're on tonight. Again, our email addresses are in the chat. We're offering $100 off your next Portugal package. Make sure though that you put Portugal in the subject line so we know what you're referring to. And that way, as soon as the borders are open, we can get you there. Thanks again, Marco, so much for joining us. The rest of you have a great week, and we will see you next week for Iceland. Have a good night, everybody.
Night, everybody.
Bye.